The NFL season's right around the corner, and it's your last chance to get in some futures on players' over-unders. I have 8 overs and 3 unders that I'm confident will be winners this season. Why did I do 8 overs but only 3 unders, you might be wondering? Well, that's because betting the under isn't fun to do. These 3 unders were locks though, so I had to include them. I'm going to start off with these unders, and then I'll get to the overs. Let's go. Mike Evans under 6.5 receiving touchdowns. The 1,000-yard man, Evans has been among the great wide receivers in the NFL for about a decade now. Over 1,000 yards in all 9 seasons of his career is an amazing accomplishment. And I honestly think he'll do it again this year. With how poorly the Bucs season is projected to be, getting Mike Evans' 10th straight 1,000-yard season is probably pretty high on their list of goals this year. Receiving yards don't always translate to touchdowns though. Evans last season only caught 6 touchdowns, which would be the under this year, and he was playing with Tom Brady, who at age 45 was much better of a quarterback than Baker Mayfield has ever been. It isn't like Evans had a lack of opportunity either. He averaged 8.5 targets per game, and the Bucs last season led the NFL in pass attempts per game by almost 4 whole attempts. Baker Mayfield last season had 29.91 pass attempts per game, while Brady had 43.11. Evans wasn't able to hit his over last season, and now his opportunities are going to drop drastically. I know there are a lot of people out there who love Mike Evans. He almost single-handedly won them a fantasy football championship last year. But the smart money is on the under touchdowns. Austin Ekeler under 8.5 rushing touchdowns. Ekeler has smashed this over the past 2 seasons, with 12 touchdowns in 2021 and 13 in 2022. It's weird to see the line at only 8.5. You would think that's an easy over, but this is a classic case of Vegas trying to really win and take your money. The past 2 seasons, Ekeler's barely reached over 200 rushing attempts, which is extremely low for a starting running back with little to no competition in the backfield. Ekeler has scored a rushing touchdown on average every 16.4 carries, an extremely low number for a starting running back over 2 seasons. Christian McCaffrey had one of the most elite fantasy seasons ever in 2019, and he averaged a rushing touchdown every 19.13 carries. Ekeler's average just isn't sustainable. Last season, the backup running back Josh Kelly was also injured for multiple games, so Ekeler likely saw more carries than he would if Kelly was healthy. As of right now, he is healthy and ready to go. The Chargers also used a 4th-round pick in 2022 on running back Isaiah Spiller. Spiller didn't get to see much action last season, but he's expected to have much more of a role this year. Ekeler's still going to be an elite weapon for the Chargers out of the backfield, but the rushing attempts will go down, and they'll continue to use him for his pass-catching prowess. Don't let the low line of 8.5 fool you. The under is the play here. Anthony Richardson under 2,800.5 passing yards. There's been a lot of hype surrounding the 4th overall pick this offseason. He's one of the best athletes to ever be drafted into the league. Experts believe his ceiling is greater than any other player taken in the 2023 draft. The problem is that he's going to take years to develop into what the Colts want him to be. During that development, Richardson and whoever is calling the plays is going to lean on his strengths, which is not throwing the football. In college last year, Richardson's passes had a 53.8 completion percentage, one of the worst in college football. Zach Wilson last season had a 54.5 completion percentage in the NFL, and he got so much crap last season for being awful. Richardson was worse at throwing the ball against college defenses than Zach Wilson was at throwing the ball against NFL defenses. NFL defenses are going to feast when Richardson is trying to move through the air. The guy's a great runner, and the Colts are going to take advantage of that. Justin Fields is considered one of the worst passers for a starting quarterback in the NFL right now. He's never reached 2,800 passing yards, and he was a much better passer in college than Richardson ever was. Richardson is a project. The Colts are going to have to wait a few years to see what they truly have, but they decided to throw him to the Wolves and let him start week 1 this season. Take the under at 2,800 passing yards, it's a no-brainer. Tony Pollard over 1,050.5 rushing yards. Pollard had a huge breakout season last year, having career highs in pretty much every single offensive stat. Now that Pollard has proven he can be a stud at the running back position, the Cowboys decide to say see you later to Ezekiel Elliott, making Pollard the undisputed number 1 running back on the team. Pollard had 1,007 rushing yards last season, just 44 less than this season's total, and that was only on 193 carries. Ezekiel Elliott had 231 carries last season for the team. With Elliott gone, those 231 carries are going to be distributed elsewhere. I'm not saying Pollard's going to have 400 carries this season, but 250 carries for Pollard is extremely likely. 250 carries at Pollard's 5.2 average yards per carry last season would be 1,300 yards. If Pollard matches career low 4.3 average yards per carry from his 2020 season, and he had 250 carries, he's still hitting that over. This over is a hammer. Brian Robinson over 750.5 rushing yards. Robinson surpassed 750 rushing yards last season, and that was only in 12 games played. His full season pace was for over 1,100 rushing yards. He comes into 2023 fully healthy and ready to be the leading rusher for the Commanders. In the fantasy football community, there has been some hype around Antonio Gibson as a late-round sleeper pick. While Gibson will get work out of the backfield, he's not a threat to Brian Robinson's rushing. Gibson will be used for his receiving ability. In 3 less games last season, Robinson still had 55 more carries than Gibson did. The Commanders' offensive line is one of the worst in the entire league, but Robinson's workload is what's going to take him over 750 rushing yards easily. He had a 17-game pace of 290 carries last season. For Robinson to not go over 750 rushing yards and 290 carries, then he would need to have the worst average yards per carry in modern-day NFL history. Take the over. Mac Jones over 3,199.5 passing yards. Mac Jones looked great his rookie year, throwing for 3,800 yards and 22 touchdowns. The sophomore slump was very real for him though. He only threw for 3,000 yards and 14 touchdowns. The Patriots' offense last season was awful with Matt Patricia calling the shots, but a new offensive coordinator for the Pats, they are now expected to be much better. Even if that expectation doesn't become a reality, the line being set at 3,200 yards is very low for Jones. He only played in 14 games last season. He plays in all 17 and he easily surpasses 3,200 yards. 3,200 yards over 17 games is only about 190 passing yards per game. Jones only had 3 games last season where he failed to reach that mark. Whether or not you think Mac Jones is a good quarterback is irrelevant to this bet. This line is way too low for a guy who can pass the ball as accurately as Mac Jones, and there's not any quarterback competition on the Patriots roster. This is an easy over. Trevor Lawrence over 26.5 touchdown passes. The 2023 NFL season is going to be the year that Trevor Lawrence solidifies himself as one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Jacksonville started last season 2-6 and they looked done for. They made a huge turnaround in the second half of the year, going 7-2 to end the season and make the playoffs. Lawrence was a huge part of that. In that 7-2 end of season stretch, Lawrence was on pace for 29 touchdowns over a 17-game season. That would be hitting this year's over with last season's roster. The Jaguars have added Calvin Ridley, an elite wide receiver talent, to their roster this season, and he's going to help push the Jaguars' offense into the top 5 best in the NFL. Trevor Lawrence was touted as the best quarterback prospect in almost 40 years when he was drafted. While he hasn't lived up to that hype just yet, it's only a matter of time. Take the over and enjoy the free money. Aaron Rodgers over 8.5 interceptions. Probably the only time that a player actually wants to hit the under of one of their stats. Rodgers is well known for being able to protect the ball better than almost anyone in NFL history. In the 15 seasons that Rodgers has been the starter for the Packers, he only threw over 8.5 interceptions 3 times. The problem is, one of those 3 times was just last season when he threw 12 interceptions. Rodgers now goes to the New York Jets to play in the AFC East, a division where all 3 teams are better defensively than the NFC North teams are. They also play against the NFC East this season, who has 3 teams in the top 10 defenses in the NFL. Rodgers is another year older, and his team has one of the hardest schedules in the NFL this season. This line is only set at 8.5 because of Rodgers' long history of not throwing interceptions. Rodgers is going to throw double-digit interceptions again this season. Take the over. George Pickens over 750.5 receiving yards, and Diontae Johnson over 825.5 receiving yards. There's been discussion this offseason about who's going to be the guy for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Johnson's been a target machine the past few seasons, but the Pickett-Pickens connection had a lot of hype surrounding it last season. The truth is, it doesn't matter which guy is considered the number 1 receiver. Both George Pickens and Diontae Johnson are going to feast this season, and they'll both have over 1,000 receiving yards, well over the line set for them. Last season, both these players surpassed the current line that's set for them. Now, quarterback Kenny Pickett has had a full year under his belt, and he's looked great in the preseason so far. He was a first-round pick last year, so he does have the talent to be great, and so far, it looks like he's going to put that talent to good use. Put your faith in the Steelers' offense this season, and take the over on both these receivers. Jamarr Chase over 1,275.5 receiving yards. It feels strange to say that an over-under of almost 1,300 yards is way too low, but when that line is set for one of the best young receivers the NFL has ever seen, it's not surprising to say that. Chase's rookie year, he put up over 1,400 receiving yards, and the expectations for him going into his sophomore year were sky high. Sadly, he missed a few games with injury, but he was still able to put up over 1,000 receiving yards and even more receptions than he did in the 17 games his rookie year. The only way that Chase does not hit this over is if he or Joe Burrow gets injured. The two of them healthy is the best quarterback-receiver duo in the NFL. He's one of the 4 guys in the NFL who has a shot at over 2,000 yards in a single season, and it wouldn't be surprising if he did it. The only argument that someone could try and make against Chase hitting the over would be the Bengals have T. Higgins and he takes away too much opportunity from Chase. That's the only potential argument that I can think of, and it's so easy to prove wrong. Chase averaged the most targets per game last season with over 11 targets a game. Just take the over and don't worry about a thing. Chase is going to hit this by week 12. Hey, you made it all the way to the end. Didn't think anyone would come this far. Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and comment your thoughts down below. Thanks.